We are back with part 2 of this fantastic series by Alex Fitzgerald on how to play pocket jacks. This video is packed with many different spots from part 1 of this video. Make sure you go back and check that out. That will help you learn how to play preflop and postflop with one of the scariest hands in poker. Most people who hate pocket jacks hate the pocket jacks because they play them quite poorly. Sometimes it's difficult to know when you should play them slowly, just calling preflop and controlling the size of the pot, or when you should be looking to 3-bet, 4-bet, or get all in with them. But if you study away from the table and really analyze your opponent's range at the table and think ahead about how the hand is likely to play out, you'll start to love pocket jacks because, in reality, they're one of the most profitable hands in the game. I hope you enjoy this video from Alex Fitzgerald, and I hope it helps you make more money whenever you're dealt the beautiful, but sometimes deadly, pocket jacks.
Here you have jacks. What would you like to do? If you don't really know much of anything, just go with the 2x. Give them a shot, especially with the short stacks, to 3-bet you so you can put it in. Now you get cold called by somebody who's a little early in position. And I'm going to give you a board y'all hate. Kellogg's. Wasn't Kellogg the actual doctor was kind of nuts, right? I can't even talk about some of the weird things he would talk about. Here, would you like to check or bet? Look that up. By the way, guys, I got to keep you interested while we're doing quizzes. So I'm going to keep battering you with these thoughts. This is a check, and he fires 1.6. Here, would you like to fold, call, or raise? What did he just tell you? We're going to go ahead and call. The turn is the 6 of spades. Here, would you like to check or bet? If you guys want to wonder why I throw in random facts, why I throw in random digressions, why I yell at you, why I change the cadence of my voice, why I change things around, you're paying attention, right? It's show business, baby. But on the other hand, you can't keep people interested. No one's going to learn anything unless it's fun. That's just how humans are. If you're not having fun with it, you're not going to do it. It's the same thing with exercise. People say, I want to exercise. It's good for my health. Then they put the exercise bike in their room. That is a weird place to put an exercise bike. That is not a fun place to exercise. When you are looking at your bedroom, you are going to think rest. You have to make it fun. You need to do like pickup basketball or something. If you've ever really gotten into a sport like pickleball or something you could do at the YMCA or basketball or with your friend, just like playing soccer or something like that. That's really fun. No one needs to make you do that. If you do that like every day, you'll be cutting weight and not even realizing why. It needs to be fun. It's the same thing happens with poker coaching. If I just batter you guys with anecdotes and things going on in different quizzes and keep the speed up and keep it going, you'll keep watching. You'll keep having fun. What would you like to do here with the 2.4K bet on you now? Fold, call, or raise. But if I don't do that, if I focus on how slick and cool I sound and make sure there's never anything that could be criticized, well, that's good for me. But it doesn't keep the things fun. And we need to keep it fun. I'm going to give you a couple more seconds here. Would you like to call or would you like to raise or would you like to fold here? One more time, my friends, and the river is the king of spades. And by the way, guys, when I don't give you a read, that means there probably wasn't one to be had, okay? But no, seriously, I have my notes here. If I don't give you stats or breakdowns or anything, it's a generic situation. And mostly what you already know what you need to know. I'm playing with mostly Americans. Here, would you like to check or bet? I love Americans. I love the action. I love the stimmy action. We're going to check here, and he checks back. What did he tell you on the flop? What hand did he not have? That's the other thing. I got a lot of quizzes, but I got to throw a lot of other quizzes in there. That's an open loop. You have a question open in your mind. You keep watching. If you ever pay attention, YouTube does that a lot. A lot of copywriters do that a lot. What did he tell you on that flop? He doesn't have ace queen. He doesn't have ace two. He doesn't have twos. How do you know that? And he doesn't have aces or queens because he would have 3-bet preflop. How do you know that? Because he probably would have bet bigger on that coordinate of a board, right? So what did he tell you? He told you, I have a pretty weak pair. I've got like nothing. Well, versus that range, you can check call once on the flop, especially with the diamond backdoor. Especially, you didn't have to be right that often. On the turn, you can go one more time. On the river, you would have had to let it go. Here you have jacks. You are facing a raise from Ruby Rabbit. What would you like to do? It's part of the show, baby. Fold, call, or raise. That is part of the show.
Hello there, it's me again. Let's work with Alex on this one, and I want you to write in the comment section below, in the spot, if you would fold, call, or raise. And if you would raise, how much would you raise to? We have to assume that we have no reads on our opponents in this scenario, so this is just a generic spot. And for extra bonus points, tell me the variables that you are considering to help you make your decision in this tricky spot. Good luck.
Remember your favorite teachers in high school? Were they normal people? Nah, they had to keep your 14-year-old ass paying attention. They were probably a little zany. Adults aren't much different. In fact, adults are more overwhelmed. That's my explanation. I'm sticking to it. If he's a little more solid, what do you do? If he's a typical player, what do you do? If he's a little more aggressive, what do you do? If he's a little more aggressive, that means he's opening a little too much. You 3-bet. If you don't know anything about the guy, if it's a typical guy, and it's an American, you 3-bet. If it's a little more solid, you're going to go ahead and call here. And let's give you... A lot of people hate this board. Like, am I supposed to play fast, slow? What do I do? You get this board. He checks to you. Would you like to check or bet? Couple more seconds. All right, that's it. How much did you want to bet here? What are you trying to get value from? You might be saying 10s, 9s, or 8s. If he's solid, how many of those does he really open from early position and then check? Not a ton. A lot of the times what you're trying to get value from here are high cards. A lot of like ace highs will check call you here. A lot of, 7s, 6s, or 5s could check call once. You don't want to bomb it versus the solid guy, because the solid guys are the type of guy to go like, okay, I did want to call here with 6s, but not anymore. So we bet, we call, we get a call. Yes. The turn is the 6 of diamonds. He checks you here. Would you like to check or bet? I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Time is up. Go ahead and bet 768 here, or bet something. Oh, sounds like they're testing some fire alarms in my apartment complex. You might have also heard my cat earlier. She wanted to be in the booth. Ruby Rabbit goes ahead and calls. The river is the 2 of diamonds. It gets checked to you here. Would you like to fire again, or would you like to check? I'm going to give you 15 seconds off this timer before I call it. And you should... This is a check. Why? Does a solid player call you again here with a worse pair when that 6 turned? Ooh, that's a tough one. That's hard to say. But I'll tell you what's calling you every single time. The solid player who opened queens, kings, and aces and just est themselves when they saw that board. You see that a lot, right? So, if you don't really know, like even when I saw that hand, I'll tell you how I normally am, guys. When I check here and I see king 10, I have a fit. When I think I miss value, I lose. I'm never going to stop talking about this, guys. When I see a poker player that's not hungry for the value bet, I worry for his future. Because that's the whole game, man. That's like a basketball player that isn't trying to sink shots. Shooters shoot. If you're trying to make money from poker, you should probably focus on the bets that make you money. That sounded like Dr. Phil if Dr. Phil talked about poker. Like just a dead basic truth. But I mean, I'm not even joking. I see some guys where, let's say Ruby Rabbit's like really loose passive. Well, you got to fire again here because he might call you with like just an ace-8. And I see some guys check back their jacks here and they just feel great about themselves. Like, dude, you just, like, the river bet's everything. That's more chips than, like, all the other streets put together. And you just skipped it. You're like, nah, fam, I don't feel it. You were running down the court, you could have dunked, and you, like, passed it. But you have to make sure you don't get a little too addicted to getting that, value bet. So this was a solid situation. I wanted to see if you'd pump it again on that river. And honestly, I think you can get away with a check there. So if you did fire again, I admire the fact that you're really trying to make as much money as possible. But do be a little careful because there are going to be times with more solid opponents you're probably not getting paid there. Here, what would you like to do with jacks here in position? I thought that said Blazing Saddles. Have you guys watched Blazing Saddles in the past, like 10 years? Just watch the first 10 minutes of that movie sometime. I don't even think they can play the original version anymore on any of the streaming sites. Anyway, someone had the DVD and we were watching it the other night. I was like, wow. We watched the whole thing. I love everything that guy does. Anyway, okay. What do you think about a larger raise here? You can go with a larger raise here. Because it's a position raise. Like call. People don't like folding to the button raises. They always assume you're messing with them. Why would you raise so big? Why so big? Why so big? Why so big? You want to talk about a phrase I've heard 2,000 times at the poker table. Well, why so big? Why so big? And then they call anyway, so I don't even know why they're asking. So we just go with the 2x, so I probably was using the 2x quite a bit. I didn't want to key anybody in. Blazing sevens call. The board comes 7 of clubs, 3 of hearts, 2 of clubs. Here, would you like to check or bet? I'm going to give you a few seconds because you jab and cross and you check hook, guys. You should have it off the top of your head. If you did say bet, how much should you bet? All right, loose player. Let's say the guy's loose. What should you do? Versus the standard player, I'd say bet like 1/3 pot, 1/4 pot, because then you get all the high cards in the backdoor draws to call you, especially the developing wheel draw. And then, God willing, they hit a pair on the turn, you can start bombing. If it's a loose player, they're just going to call you with whatever, with their ace. If they got an ace high, and I don't think like this, but I've spoken to, remember, there's probably no one on earth who has worked more with more poker players privately than myself. For 10 years, I taught like every morning. Just spent hours and hours talking with poker players. I don't think this way. I don't have an ace 10 here and go, sweet, I have ace 2, 3. You might not think that way, but you need to know a lot of looser players think that way so you can get away with a bigger bet here. So we do, and we get away with it. So he calls, and the turn is the ace of diamonds, and this player leads 6.1K. Here, would you like to fold, call, or raise? I'm sorry, guys, I have to put you in the situations you all hate, otherwise you're not going to learn. He leads out here. If you don't know anything, what should you do? You should fold. So something you're going to see in almost all data sets, guys, and I can tell you this from experience having spoken to thousands and thousands of poker players with thousands and thousands of hours. What people want to do, because this is the cheapest way to possibly win at poker. They raise preflop because they want to see flops. They call preflop versus raises because they want to see flops. With pairs, they kind of want to get to the showdown. And that's the cheapest way to play poker and win sometimes. So you can keep doing your hobby and keep having fun. So what happens is most people call too much. Most people don't fold enough because it's boring. And it doesn't feel like they're doing anything. It feels like they're just sitting there. If I said, hey, what do you do with your free time? And you said, I sit in a room and do nothing. You sound like a crazy person. No one likes that. And they're not going to raise and run and gun unless they're a specific personality type that really likes that. And we've all run into those kind of players. But the way most Homo sapiens play poker is they want to call. And they want to see if their hands are good. It's an open loop in their head, remember? Open loop is, you know, guys, when I ask you questions and then I don't answer it right away, it's kind of frustrating because the human mind doesn't like that. But that's a trick you can use as a teacher to make people pay attention. If anybody listening is a high school teacher or something like that, if you start the class with a question and then just let it hang there for a minute, a lot of times students will quiet down because they want to hear the end of it. It's like someone telling you half a joke. It's really weird. Or getting a tune stuck in your head from a song you heard years ago, but you can't place it. Is that Whitney Houston? It just kind of gets stuck in your head. Well, people get like that when they flop something, and it's been, you know, this is the best hand I've had in hours, blah, blah, blah. They want to know if it's good. So they call a little too much. And people don't like bluffing because it's a social faux pas in some countries. I don't know why, but in America, we really look down on people who bluff and get caught. Oh, look at you trying. So most people call too much. They don't bet enough. They don't value bet enough, and they don't fold enough. So you need something drastic to make you believe that a person is different than that. We didn't have it here. This guy was loose. Whenever you're making a big call, you have to ask yourself, does he do this with X? And X is the best hand that you beat. Does he lead tens on that turn? That doesn't make sense. If he's got a club draw, that doesn't make a ton of sense either. He could check and possibly get a free card. That was going back to whenever you're not really sure what to do. Let's go back to this situation. So on this turn, so the turn was the 6 of diamonds, and he checks to you. Whenever you kind of, you know, I think I could get thin value maybe if I bet here, but I'm not in love with it. 9 times out of 10, especially with, you know, if you're playing with like Eastern European psychos, that's one thing. But if you're playing with people who play recreationally, and that's a lot of people in first world countries, and this is a lot of people from first world countries, you should lean toward the bet. You should lean toward the bet because people call too much, fold too little, raise too little. And in this situation, when a guy decides like, hey, it's time to party, I'm leading 75% pot on the turn. Remember, bets are rare. Now, if this guy's Brazilian, I got to start asking myself, what do I need to defend here minimum versus that bet size, right? So if someone bets half pot, my bet, that if someone bets half pot as a bluff, their bet needs to work 33% of the time. So presumably I got to defend 2/3 of the time. Okay, what would that look like? Do I think this guy overshoots on the bluff or under does it? And a lot of guys I'll play with from different countries, they overdo it. So I have my, okay, I probably should defend this, and you call down, you pray. But if they're not bluffing, you don't need to hero call. It's all right. And most of you listening to my voice playing games like that, you play a lot of home games, you play a lot of $30 tournaments, you play a lot of $50 tournaments, play a lot of ignition tournaments, Bet Online, America's Card Room, or even some of the big .com sites. If you're playing like $20, $30 games, a lot of those guys play recreationally.
Hi there, Sharks. I'm back again. If you're enjoying this video, do me a quick favor and click that like and subscribe button below, and I'll let you in on a little secret. If we get over 1,500 likes on this video, I'll even release the final part of this 3-part series, How to Play Pocket Jacks by Alex Fitzgerald, which is currently only available for members of pokercoaching.com in the member section. The final part of this video is a fantastic summary of everything you will have learned throughout parts 1 and 2 and 3. You definitely do not want to miss it, so make sure you click that like button. All right, back to Alex.
Here, would you like a full call or raise? Let's just skip to that. Let's just do a raise. And comes around to Lanowski, if I'm pronouncing that right, who 3-bets you here. What would you like to do? So let's say we don't know a whole lot about Lanowski. What would you like to do in this situation? We're going to go ahead and call here. And Max goes ahead and calls. What should you do if Max is a looser player? Should you 4-bet or call? The board comes 10 of diamonds, 9 of spades, 4 of clubs. On you. Sorry guys, I knew they were going to test it at one point, but they couldn't give me a specific time. Checker bet. If Max is loose, you should call there more to allow them into the pot, especially if Lanowski is a reg, because if it's a reg, you two are just going to essentially trade coolers, and jacks are usually going to be on the losing side of that. Whereas if you will allow the loose player in, some good things going to happen. Gives you a little bit of protection too. Because when a person like C-bet bluffs into multiple players, that's a lot harder. So a lot of solid players won't do that. So that lets you know where they are a little bit more. Now, Juan Lanowski, we don't really know anything about, so that's not as applicable to this situation. So they check back here. And the turn is the 8 of diamonds. Here, would you like to check or bet? Hopefully at this point, guys, a number of these situations, a lot of people feel like they kind of make me squeamish. They should be getting a little easier at this point. You'll notice we're focusing on a lot of the same things. And these are the fundamental, this is all the stuff poker players learn to begin with, what I'm teaching you. And it works. It's going to work in most games, especially games where you're playing with humans who are not balanced, who are exploitable. If you want to study creepy stuff, man, study persuasion, copyright, all that stuff, copywriting. You'll find humans make most of our psychology books. You'll find most people make their decisions more or less just emotionally, and then they justify it later. So we're going to fire here, and I'll explain just a bit later. So Max goes ahead and calls. And the river is the 9 of clubs. Here, would you like to check or bet? Actually, if you've ever worked in marketing too, you've heard some things and seen some studies that are pretty crazy. If you want to read a little bit more about this, learn more about Homo sapiens, I would recommend what is it? The Art of Hunting Humans, The Righteous Mind, The Elephant in the Brain, Thinking Fast and Slow, The Undoing Project, Influence, Persuasion. The One Sentence Persuasion Course. Loser Think. Anything by Scott Adams is incredible. Here, do you want to check about? And really, like, poker is a game with humans, so the more you understand about humans, the better you'll do. By the way, the book, The Art of Hunting Humans, the guy's being satirical. It's just a joke. It's like humans have these blind spots. You'll notice this if you look for it. Just before you report me to the authorities. We're going to go ahead and fire here. And Max goes in and calls. And boom! That's what's up. How did we know he was going to pay us off? By the way, guys, sometimes I'm going to rush you. Sometimes I'm going to talk at you. You know why? Because when you're playing live, people are going to rush you and they're going to talk to you. It's not going to be a perfectly controlled environment all the time. Okay? You got to deal with it. How do you know he's looser? How do you know? I told you don't know anything about this guy. How do you know? Because he called preflop, then he called a squeeze. He did that a little out of position. Does that strike you as someone who is super disciplined? Most tight aggressive players, when they come into the pot they're raising, this person just did 2 passive actions to begin with. So we fire on this turn. They call. And this river comes. That's not good if they got a 9, but there's not going to be that many 9s. Did you want to check here? A lot of people want to check the minute that board gets paired. They go, I'm going to check. And when he bets a jack or he bets a flush draw, I'll just collect. Guys, how much? He's got 19,000 back and there's 14,000 in the middle. A bet is very significant. You're not going to get that bet that often. How many combinations of flush draws does he have? Every flush draw combination you can think of is 1. It's 1. So you're hoping for a fraction of a couple of combos, right? The jack, oh, he'll fire the jack. You have the jack. This is one of those things that just chaps my ass, man, which is when a guy's like, no, I'm really trying to make it or whatever, and they check and the other person checks and they just go, oh, great, I had the best hand. Like, dude, think about it. He's got like the 10 there, like all the time. He's probably not going to give you anything with the draws, so why wouldn't you bet? And he's not going to rip it if you fire. You're going to be getting like 3-1. Does he really think that's going to work? He doesn't have queens, he didn't 3-bet. He doesn't have kings, he didn't 3-bet. He doesn't have aces, he didn't 3-bet. 10-9 probably would have raised you on that turn. A set probably would have raised you on the turn. Get the fear out of your eyes and fire. If you check there, that's one of those, like, if we're really thinking about the combinations, like, what are we worried about? You got to put something out there. It doesn't have to be much, but it's got to be something. That's 5,000 chips. That's 5,000. What's your win rate? Do you know your win rate for 100 hands? What's your batting average? What's the big blind here? Pre-flop. 350. What was that? 15x we netted on the river? Hold on. Let's do math. Obviously, he has a 9 there some percentage of the time, but I think most of the time we're just like giving away 16 big blinds for the hell of it. By the way, I don't think 7s is folding when there's a missed flush draw and straight draw out there. I really don't. I don't know if an 8's folding. 8-7, I don't know. I get looked up by that all the time. That's your win rate for the next 200 hands, most likely. Hours and hours of work we could just pass up there. So you notice most people, the way they look at no limit hold'em is, I don't want to lose with jacks. You notice we're just trying to make money. Our hand, it's kind of there, and we need to know what it is. But what's far more important is our opponent's hand and how our hand does in relation to it. Here you have jacks, and you're facing a limper. You got bamboozled. What would you like to do? Full call or raise? I remember this. Okay. I misclick here, so like do not play this way. If this guy is a 50-24, what do? Plays 50% of the pots, raises like 24% of the time. Let's say this guy has been tight aggressive so far that day. Live online, you know the type. You don't need the numbers. Just doesn't want to play a pot. Now all of a sudden he limps. What do? Actually, if he's a really tight player and he does this, you can raise small. 2x, 3x. I mean, I prefer 3x. If he's the 50-24 or the 50-15, what should you do here? Honestly, if you just make it 9,000, I'm not going to be mad at you because that looks like a lot to a normal person. But I can tell you as someone who's worked with thousands of poker players from 60 countries or whatever it was, when you get like just loose passive players that want to see the flop with their 10-8 of diamonds, you've seen these people play roulette in blackjack and the way they throw money around. They want to see the cards. They want to see if they beat the dealer. They're not thinking the way you think. Don't project the way you think onto other people. I used to always do that. I'm thinking this, therefore he's thinking of that. And then it dawned on me one day, like, Alex, that is so narcissistic to think everybody thinks like you. How does this person think? Now, you probably don't want to go to 9,000, but you got to get this guy involved because you're going to get a big pot in position, heads up, with the weakest player at the table with a better hand. You would have to be the worst player on earth to lose with that edge. Guys, when I was like 19, I couldn't tie my shoes 2 times out of 3, but I made money as a no-limit hold'em player. Why? I understood that. Everything I just told you there. I also wasn't afraid to fold. So we raise. And we'll do a multi-weight pot here. So we got one limper call to raise, and the ice ace goes ahead and calls. Here, would you like to check or bet? What should you be asking me? What should you be wondering? Ice ace is a looser player. You got bamboozled was a looser player. All right. If you said B, how much did you want to bet? Time is up. We're going to fire. We fire pretty large. The ice ace calls. They turn is the ace of spades. Sorry, guys. I got to do it to you. It's all the situations you hate. Here, would you like to check or bet? Time is up. I'm going to go ahead and check here. And homeboy here bets 8.6K. Would you like to fold, call, or raise? What should you be asking me? What should you want to know? If you're playing, what should you be thinking of? Is this guy loose passive or loose aggressive? I'll tell you, I don't know. 5 seconds. Okay. Guys, you got to go back to fundamentals. If you don't know anything, just remember, people don't bet enough. If you're ever going to make a big call, by the way, if you're ever making a big call on the turn, you got to be a lot more sure than when you're doing a big call on the river. Why? The hand's over on the river. You got another street to play. It's not like you call and the hand's over here. People do what too much? They call too much. They like showing their hands down too much. They don't bet enough. They don't fold enough. When he fires, He fires decent here. What's the most important thing to ask yourself? Does he do this with X? And X is the best hand that you beat. That'll help you eliminate value combinations. I highly doubt this is tens or not. Okay, how about flush draws? Just random flush draws. It's possible. How many combos are there? That's not a ton of combos. That's not guys, every okay, so he called you pre-flop. Let's say, okay, 10-9 of diamonds. That's one combo. You can't count it 100% of the time either. That's hallucination. You don't know that for a fact. You got to pick a number. Do you think he fires that half the time? Okay, that's half a combo. All right, so it's, it could be a flush draw. We're not really sure. That's not many combos to begin with. We can't really count them. So, okay, is it a bluff? What could he be bluffing? I guess like a 6-7 of spades could have peeled. But that was a pretty big bet on the flop. Why did we bet that big on the flop? What's your value target? A lot of wheel cards there. A lot of guys don't like folding their aces. Who specifically doesn't like folding their aces? Loose players, especially if they have a backdoor diamond. So we go a little bit bigger here. And we already have the limper here. A little likely to be a loose player too. A lot of them don't like folding the ace high to the first one. We get the first shell, right? Well, if we're really aiming for ace highs, and ace highs guys are like tons of combinations, okay? Let me show you this. Okay, I apparently booted up classic Flopzilla, but we'll, this works on Pro too. So we'll just, I'm doing this wrong. Let's put a random cold calling range there that looks, remember, we have to check the accuracy of our assumptions. I think this is, it really helps me if he has more flush draw combinations, but I think realistically, since we 2x pre-flop, that's pretty likely. Okay, so we'll put in just, okay, let's just pick a range. I just want it, this isn't 100% accurate. I just want you guys to see this. So the board comes 5 of diamonds, 2 of diamonds, 2 of spades. Now, let's discuss the hypothetical where the guy doesn't want to fold the ace high, because that's a fairly good board for ace high. And we already know he's loose. Both of these guys are fairly loose. So hopefully one of them calls this with the ace high, in which case there's 3 outs. So they call us. We'll say he slow plays quads, full house, 3 of a kind, sure. Over pairs he decides to go with. He would have 3-bet queens, kings, and aces. Top pairs, so like 5 he calls his pocket pair. Flush draws and open-ended straight draws he calls with, because we just fired into 2 people after raising from early position. So it's something like this, and something I want you to notice is, can I blow this up real quick? So right here, you're going to notice the number of combinations of each hand. So a lot of people will say like, well, I think he could have a flush draw there, or he could have ace high, and they'll say that like they're equivalent things. But the thing you're going to notice is I'm actually counting quite a few flush draws there. It's not 100% he calls this with 10-8 of diamonds, but let's say we could count all of them. Well, 7-6 suited, 8-6 suited, 9-7 suited, 8-7 suited. Those are all just 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 combinations. That's a very optimistic projection. How many combinations are there of ace high? You notice there's quite a few of them. Now, some of these ace highs we would need to rule out because presumably they're not calling as much with like ace 6 suited as like ace jack. But there's 12 combinations of ace queen off, 6 combinations of ace jack offsuit, 12 combinations of ace 10 offsuit, 4 combinations of ace queen suited, 2 combinations of ace jack suited, 4 combinations of ace 10 suited. I think I've made my point. So you can't just fixate on the hand you beat and then go sweet and then call, because that's what everybody else does at your card room. And those guys are not driving Maseratis from poker. So presumably it's not the best way to play. Most people do not beat the rake. The vast majority of people do not beat the rake. If you play the way the vast majority of people play, you can logically expect to not beat the rake. And how do they play? They showed up to the card room to play. They did not show up to the card room to fold. So the turn's the ace of spades. And let's see what we got here. So let's say our opponent fires top pair or better, and all the flush draws. We have about 20% equity there. And the really funny thing is people will say, you know, I always get my money in ahead. I just run bad, man. And then they check call here like 100% of the time because it's just one overcard. It's just one bet. Dude, how big was the bet? How much was the big blind? So that was 8.8K. And what was the... So it was 9... It's like 10x, man. That's most people's win rate for like 100 hands. And you'll see people just do this all the time. And it's like, well, I've got 20% equity, right? I was close. I needed 25. Bro, the hand's not over. Like, just 100% of the time, does it go check on the river? He's allowed to bluff you. And you can't even count all those flush draw combinations because he checks a certain amount of them, which makes it even worse. So let's play with this real quick, then we'll go. So let's just, this is the roughshod way to do it. So let's just say he's not playing that. So now you notice your equity goes down to 17%. If you said check call right here, because it was just one overcard, and it was just one street, you got to really, really think about what you were hoping for. And this has nothing to do with jacks are just a hard hand to play. That situation was pretty cut and dried. If it's a loose player and you have no real reason to think, even if they're going off the handle with all the flush draws, we could throw in there, or just a bunch of them. We gave a bunch of flush draws there. It's still not a terrific situation because he's probably not betting lesser pairs. The hand's not the issue. It's often our ranging. It's often our inability to accept reality on reality's terms. There are 8 of them in one of us. We don't always get to play. It doesn't happen. Sometimes you got to sit there and watch somebody else up to bat. Here, you get a limper. Would you like to fold, call, or raise? It's more or less the same situation. You might want to raise a little smaller because there's the shorter stacks behind. But if this person's loose, what should you do? If this person's loose passive, make the raise size large enough that they won't care because they're loose and having fun, but any good reg to your left isn't going to try to isn't going to try to get in there with position and do something to you. Now, speaking of someone with position, Melissa cold calls us. Melissa tends to play solid versus me. I'll say that. I don't take that with a grain of salt. I can't give you a specific read. Sosa Santos goes ahead and calls. And the board comes 5-3-5, and it gets checked to us here. Here, would you like to check or bet? On this particular day, Melissa was playing a little more solid. Couple more seconds. Okay, time is up. We go ahead and fire. And Melissa calls. The turn is the king of spades. Here, would you like to check or bet? I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Time is up. Here we go. We put it in. And she trapped us. Okay. Was this a good bust or not? So, Melissa has been a little solid. So when you raise preflop, do you think she's typically 3-betting with aces, kings, or queens? Yeah, most likely. So what does that leave? It leaves 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s. Now on this board, and ace highs. She's probably not going to call with ace high on this board. She might, but not too often. So she calls. And the turn is the king of spades. Now also, you have to consider your image. My image is fairly loose. So a flush draw develops on that turn. We have reason to believe queens, kings, or aces would have re-raised pre-flop. Not wanting to be in a multi-way pot. Solid players try to do that sometimes. Well, what's your value target? 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s. Do they fold when a flush draw develops on the turn if you got a loose image? Typically not. And this is why you can never just say things with certainty. I thought she would raise probably about 80, 90% of the time with a bigger pair, but not 100%. And you know what? Sometimes I just got blasted. That's that. You know, I mean, people are going to outplay you every day. If you know why, it is profoundly strange to see people that think, I mean, if you think of the average person at a poker table, a big pot will happen and they'll lose, and they will just start hallucinating ways what they did was right. Yeah, I put you on this, so I thought that, so I was setting it, you know. It's always, what was that book? Range used to talk about this. There's the, what they would do. Actually, let me see if I can, you know, long story short, they do this test, right? Where they show people like 6 pairs of pictures. They say, who do you think's more attractive? This person or that person? They go through the line, like 6 of them, right? And then at the end, they'll take the ones you selected and they'll say, why did you think this person was more attractive? And the people will give justifications. The researchers will switch the photos, and 80 to 90% of people will still come up with justifications why they did their decision. People make an impulsive decision and then they justify it later. That's just one of their things, right? I've heard people say here, like, you're going to go bust if you don't re-raise there. That was terrible the way you played it. No, you got dunked on. Melissa outplayed me right here. She trapped me. That was beautiful. That was really well done. And here's the thing. Part of being a good poker player is realizing when you got outplayed. Making sure it doesn't happen again. Now, this was a really difficult situation because I didn't give Melissa credit for this. I didn't think she was trapping here. I thought she was just kind of stuck with some middle pairs she didn't necessarily want to fold. I thought like 8s were a fold there pre-flop in her spot. Some of the time, or 7s or 6s. And obviously the 7's really good if she has that. But like 8s, 9s, 10s are really weird to play. And I just thought most people call too much with that. And I thought she was one of them. And I think she trapped me here. She just wins. If you can admit someone outplayed you, you can replicate what they did. I had a Russian in 2015 outplayed the living S out of me in a pot. And I remember it to this day because I put it together on the river, but I barely did. I barely did. And I sat there for 4 minutes with my jaw open because he had a towel. But in the situation, I was so shocked to see it, I couldn't believe it. So my jaw was kind of hanging open for 4 minutes while I put it together. But once I admitted that guy dunked on me, that guy beat me, I could replicate it. And I've done that move to hundreds of people now. Actually, I wouldn't say hundreds. I don't do it enough. I got a coach who's really, he does the same move and he harps on me to do it a lot. And I'll be honest, sometimes I mess it up. But it's a move that's now in my arsenal because I was man enough to go, I got outplayed. On that particular hand, I got outplayed, baby. But that's one of those things. You got to backtrack and go, why did you do what you did? Did that make sense? Was that likely? I think it all was. But, you know, sometimes you just get beat. You're facing a raise here from Brilliance 4. Fundamentals, guys. Fundamentals. What am I going to say? If you don't know anything about the person, what should you do? If the person's more solid, what should you do? If the person's a little bit more aggressive, what should you do? If you don't know anything, you're going to raise here. If the guy's a little tighter, it's okay to cold call a little bit more. Just because they're not really going to raise, get it in with you with like 10s, 9s, or 8s, or even give you much action once you 3-bet from such an early position. So you 3-bet, and I told you every one of these situations is going to be one you hate. You're not going to get better without that, but you should be starting to feel more comfortable. So the board comes 9 of clubs, 7 of clubs, 3 of hearts. We had 2 cold callers. Then brilliance came along, and everybody checks to you. What do you need to know, guys? If the cold callers are super loose, having fun, having a good time, what should you do? If they're a little bit more solid, what should you do? If they're a little looser, you can just bomb because they could have like 9, 6 of diamonds and they're not folding. But they're a little bit more solid this time. So how should we approach that? Just a touch more. They're playing okay. So we go ahead and fire. Power booster goes ahead and calls. The turn is the 7 of spades. It gets checked to you here. Here, would you like to check or bet? 15 seconds. Okay. We're going to go ahead and fire again. And power booster calls. The river is the 7 of diamonds. Power booster checks you. Here, would you like to check or bet? I'm going to give you 15 seconds. Put it in. And power booster goes ahead and calls. And boom. All right. Let's back up this whole hand. I hope you're understanding now. Jacks is such a wonderful hand to learn hand reading on because you never really just have the lock. Even here, you got an overpair with 3 players. You're not loving it. You got to think. You got to think through things. So on this board, when you bet that small on the board, what did you just tell the guy you had? You probably wouldn't do that with a set, right? It's a pretty coordinated board. So they should cap you at 1 pair. The one thing, though, is they can't really cap you off an overpair. So it doesn't help them that much, but you need to be aware if you're playing with good players, they're going to notice that. And if they're just observing the hand, no, they're going to notice that. They might make your life a living hell in another hand if you bet small. So the turn comes the 7 of spades. What did you want to do here? This is why you can't mash the half pot button. So this guy had pot. What does he have when he check calls you on that flop? He has a club draw. He has a 9. He has a 7. He has a 10-8. He has a Jack-10. He was the big blind. He cold called 10-8. No, excuse me. Jack-10, yeah, people don't like folding that. Club draws make a little bit more sense. 6-8, 10-8 don't make a lot of sense. A lot of suited, ace-9 suited, 10-9 suited, 9-8 suited. That makes sense. 7-8 suited makes sense. So he's got one of those hands. Pocket 8s, pocket 10s, pocket 6s make sense. Okay, so think of that range. And this is, guys, this is all you need to do to make money at poker. Just think calmly about ranges. Most people, when they play, just really get up in their head and can't think. And you don't even have to be that great at thinking in the moment. If you just study before the test, you'll be like, ooh, I know this one. And you'll be ready. And then just slow down a little bit. Deep breaths to the gut. Engage the parasympathetic nervous system. So a lot of guys just fire out like half pot here. I want you to imagine having pocket eights and this guy just fires like half pot. What do you now know? He's not folding if you jam. So the guy essentially just overbet jammed the turn. How do you feel with your 9? How do you feel with your 8? The guy 3-bet preflop on under the gun razor. You're not feeling good. Now, when the person bets 7.7K, you don't even blink. You just call. And then, uh-oh. Not much of a river jam there, is it? I'm priced in. A club draw miss. Remember, you got to give them excuses to play their hands. You got to give them excuses to call. They didn't show up to fold. They showed up to play. They're there to gamble. They're there to have fun. But you need to give them an excuse because these are presumably still adults. And adults hopefully can understand when they're just being a little preposterous. And if you got 6s and the guy just overbet jams that turn, which is effectively what you'd be doing if you bet pretty solid there, if you just mash that half pot button, a certain percentage of adults are going to go, okay, this is ridiculous, I'm done. But if you bet small, and then this is a quite fortuitous river card. Jesus, there's a $4 word. This is quite a good river card. The 7 of diamonds. Now, 6s might just go, man, that jam's not that big. Some club draws missed, some straight draws missed. Why aren't you that worried about the draws? I didn't even say it, but you shouldn't be. That's why you can bet smaller. You're blocking Jack 10. You're blocking club draws. If you just bet pretty decent size on the turn, really good chance you lose them. But instead, uh-oh. Uh-oh. What was that? 25,000 on the river? This is the name of the game, guys. These heavyweight shots. And the great thing about tournament poker, you don't have to be the best player in the world to excel at tournament poker. What you need to be is tough. You need to be tough. You need to hate losing. I can't tell you how many times I watch a guy play for 3 days and then just decide he doesn't really hate losing and he gives it away because screw this guy. And I'm tired and I want to go home. Or I want to go home or I want a big stack. Admit it, you've thought that before, haven't you? It's human. It's human. We get fatigued. I just got done playing in Oklahoma. Dumbest thing I've ever done with a poker tournament. 12-hour car ride, then I played the next day. I felt like I got punched in the gut by Jerron Ennis, man. Like, it was just, it was awful. I felt like I got punched in the gut by a boxer. I was, And there's a human need of like, look, I think I would feel a little bit better if I had more chips. Maybe I'll just gamble, and if not, I'll head home. And you got to understand, the more fatigue people have, the more that's going to become more and more tempting, especially if they haven't gotten anything done for days. They're going to get frustrating. 750 was the big blind here. And that river doesn't look like much, but these shots are always available to you if you're paying attention in tournament poker. Did I get that right? 25,000. 34x. That could be your win rate for 300 hands. Have you ever played 300 hands live? Is that right? Was it 750? Doesn't look like much. It even fooled me, and I set up the damn play. Damn, brother. Yeah. Now here's the thing. What does he beat when he calls there? He beats like club draws, right? He beats like straight draws. That's it. I mean, and to be fair to this guy, we set this up. It's not much of a call, it feels like. But do we really bet that small with Jack 10 on the turn and just jamming on the river? I told you I have one gift in that people like to call me. People like to call everybody, but I love how much people like to call me. I mean, you know, I'm not jamming 6s there for value. I don't have a ton of draws. All the draws you can think of. You know, do I really bet 1/4 pot twice with them? But that's the thing. We just set it up and the guy gives us, this is how you make money with jacks. You got to be an adult and realize there's just times it's not worth a 10S. And you got to let it go. There's not, there'll be times I play poker. My first day at WPT, the WPT Choctaw in Oklahoma, that entire tournament I cashed, I never got above a 3x stack. I didn't get to play for, I think we played 10 levels. They were 1 hour levels. For 10 hours, guys, I didn't get to play. I went down to 1/4 of my starting stack. I just didn't get to play. Every time I'd open jacks, the board would be queen 10-5 and it'd be bet raise and I had to fold. That's part of being a player. You got to be an adult and see reality on reality's terms. And I'm not very adult-like when it comes to a lot of things. I'm a big kid when it comes to a lot of things. So if I can do this, I know you can do it. Here, you're facing a raise. We're going to keep up those early position raises when you got jacks. Would you like to fold, call, or raise? What am I going to hit you on? Come on, guys. If he's aggressive, what do you do? If you don't know anything, what do you do? If he's solid, what do you do? If he's solid, you want to be really careful about 3-betting because he's probably not opening a lot of ace-x and a lot of suited gappers or suited connectors to begin with. So when you 3-bet, you're not getting a ton of value. And then those are the guys that they might call a 3-bet with 10s, 9s, or 8s, but they're not going to give you much after that. But if they got queens, kings, or aces, this is perfect for them. And a lot of these nits, that's what they look for. That's their only trick. I'm going to wait till I got aces and they're going to overplay. If you don't know anything, what do you do? Go ahead and raise it. So we raise it and we get cold called by making do and we get called by 3 nails. Here. The board comes ace of hearts, jack of spades, 3 of spades. It gets checked to you. Would you like to check or bet? Both of these players, 3 nails we don't know that much about. But why do you know making do is a little looser, guys? Even if I showed you nothing else. Early position raised, early position 3-bet, and he cold called from that stack. You don't see a lot of regs do that. They decide to go with it, or they don't. So he's a little looser. What would you like to do with a little looser guy here? All right, time is up. We're going to fire a little bit bigger here. And making do calls. The turn is the 9 of hearts. Here, would you like to check or bet? Five more seconds. Time's up. Fire in the hole. We shove. He calls. And we fade something there. Why do we bet bigger on the flop, guys? This is a board you are putting the pedal to the metal on. Now, I've heard people say this, well, he's looser, so he calls with a bunch of gappers and stuff like that, so it's less likely he hit this board, so we should slow play. That makes a critical assumption, which is false, in my opinion. What is that assumption? That assumption is that he has 10-8 of diamonds here, and if we check, and there's 2 people in the pot, in the turns the 7 of spades, and we both check again, he's just going to bomb. That is very unlikely. So, if you slow play, I don't think you get much more action, and you do lose a ton of value, because what do most people cold call with here? It's some 10s, it's some 9s. They probably would have played fast with queens, kings, or aces. But it's mostly aces. Like ace, king, ace, queen, ace, x. Why is that? There's more combinations. Let's bring back our handy dandy Flopzilla real quick. And I'll just show you this real quick. So you'll notice like 8s right there, there's 6 combos of that. Whereas if you go up to, okay, let me take out the ace. There's 16 combos of ace queen when you count the suited and unsuited combinations. So a lot of those 16 are going to match with that ace out there. And here's the thing, if he's loose, does he fold an ace to anything? Do you think 3 nails is folding an ace to anything? You got to go for it. You got to set up this turn jam too. You make it a little bit bigger in the turn jam here. People just go like, he could just be shoving a draw, and they call with like every single one of their aces. If your bet is really big here in relation to the pot, they start thinking. You don't want them to be thinking. You want to let them call. So he calls, and we hold on that one. So here we have jacks, and we are facing a early position raise. Again, I'm going to keep putting you in those situations. Just a couple more. You know what I'm about to say. If you don't know anything about the person, what are you going to do? All right, you raise. Comes back around to this person. And the board comes, another board you all hate. Ace of clubs, 5 of clubs, ace of diamonds. Here, would you like to check or bet? I am going to give you 15 seconds. Time is up. We fire. Ma goes ahead and calls. The turn is the King of Hearts. It gets checked to you. Here, would you like to check or bet? Five seconds. Time's up. I'm going to go ahead and check here. And the river, they bet 997 into 1900. Here, would you like to fold, call, or raise? I am going to give you the full 30. The time bank is empty. Do you think I was giving you that much time because this was a call? You would be wrong. This is a fold. So let's back it up. Remember, guys, how many combos of flush draws are there? What's the other problem? He's not betting all of them. What's the other problem? Uh-oh. You had the jack of clubs in your hand, right? Now you can fire here. Remember, people call too much. They don't bluff enough, they don't value bet enough, and they don't fold enough. So you really need to know a lot about your guy before you start deviating from trying to exploit those human tendencies when they play no limit hold'em, when they play a game of chance. Here, a lot of king eyes are going to call you. A lot of suited connectors with backdoor draws. A lot of those hands are going to call you. A lot of flush draws are going to call you. They're probably not going to raise you on the ace-ace board. So you can get some value. So we go a little smaller here. And you're going to get called by 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s, 6s, you know. So you go. Turn comes the King of Hearts. Okay. Going to be pretty hard now for 7s to call you again. That's a pretty terrible board. Club draw is probably not going to call you again. You also block a lot of the club draws. Not a lot of reasons to fire here. So you check. And then this person fires on the river. And if you're saying, well, you know, I beat a missed flush draw. How many combos is that, guys? If you don't know that off of the top of your head, if you don't even have a ballpark off the top of your head, do you want to put that much money in? The river bets are always everything. The river bets, if you can master your river bets, if you can get more river bets than the other guy, and if you cannot pay off river bets when it's a bad idea, you'll be fine. There's not that many. Like, seriously, guys, imagine having 10-9 of clubs here. And the person checks back on the turn. Are you leading the river? It's an ace, king, 5-3 board. So if you told me he's betting 30% of his missed flush draw combinations, I would take the under, honestly. 40%, if you said that, I would really take the under. And that's still not enough. Like, you need to know he's doing a confused value bet with sevens. You need to know he's firing all of his missed flush draws. This is a really big call. And you see a lot of people just throw it in like whatever. People hold their cards above the muck. I've just got to see it. This is most likely that, an ace he might have check raised on the flop. Not always. There's a lot of times this is a king. I don't think you're winning most of the time. All right, guys, just a couple more and then we'll finish up for the day. Here, you are facing a raise with pocket jacks. What would you like to do here? Well, I didn't give you much of a read, but hopefully at this point you're thinking, I should be 3-betting most of the time because my hand's going to be better than the average player's opening hand from that range. Many people just flat with jacks all the time because they're much more worried about losing than they are thinking about winning. They want to not be a loser more than they want to be a winner. But here we're going to 3-bet, and I'm going to keep throwing out these boards that people have trouble with. So let's give you a flush draw, but also an overcard here. What would you like to do, check or bet? 10 seconds. Okay. We're going to go ahead and check here. And this player checks behind. The turn is the ace of clubs. Here, would you like to check or bet? 10 seconds. Okay, time is up. We check. And this player checks behind. The river is the 5 of clubs. Here, would you like to check or bet? I'm going to give you 15 seconds. Alrighty then. This is a check. And we face a bet. Now we'll finish up on this one, guys. Then we'll go through notes. We face a bet here. Would you like to fold, call, or raise? 15 seconds. Time is up. This is a fold, guys. Just because you likely have the best hand pre-flop doesn't somehow make this a call or a bet. And you see a lot of people make mistakes here. Now, if you said bet on this flop, you're probably getting called by a lot of weaker pairs, by some weaker flush draws. That's okay. The problem is the pot gets a little bit bigger when you're out of position. And when you check the turn, it caps your range a little bit. That can put you in some trouble. If you check here, you do have a very solid hand to check call with. This goes a little beyond the scope of this video, but I actually do check raise a ton of boards out of position. So checking if I'm playing with a person a little bit doesn't necessarily mean green light, go ahead and fire. But it's a pretty safe check. So we do decide to check here. Now the turn comes the ace of clubs, and that's not good because a lot of the times they'll be checking back with a number of aces that they raise call with pre-flop and has a bunch of equity pre-flop and then checks back on that flop because they don't expect to get a lot of folds once you 3-bet check. So we check again here. Now here's where you see a lot of guys trip up. It gets checked and then the river bricks and they go, well, it went check twice, I should bet for value. But again, you always need to be asking yourself, what am I trying to get value from? Now, 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s, 6s, do they pay us off? That's a pretty tough call to make, don't you think? With 2 overcards out there in a 3-bet pot. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just not saying. What I am saying is that we can't count every one of those combos. And remember what we've been learning here with basic combination counting? What is there not many combos of? There's not many combinations of pairs. There's not many combinations of suited connectors. There's 4 combinations of suited connectors, 6 combinations of every pair you can think of, and 16 combinations of an unsuited combo. Okay? So it's far more likely this person has an ace-jack or an ace-10 they're pot controlling than this person has 7s that they're going to call with, because you can't even, if they're calling with half the combos, that's 3 combos. That's not a lot. So you're not really getting value for much. So this is another time that we reveal an autopiloting maneuver that makes no sense. And you'll see lots of guys do this live. It gets checked twice and they just go ahead and fire in the river, because what they don't want to face is this. Which is, oh God, he bet. I let him do that. Oh God. The only reason you would be dreading this is if you're in the habit of making really bad calls. Could this be a miss draw? Sure. Why haven't we heard from it? Don't you think we would have heard from the King of Hearts by now? Maybe would have taken one shot? Okay. Well, it's kind of hard for it to be the Jack of Hearts, don't you think? So it's not that many combinations that we beat. Whenever you're making a big call, you always have to ask yourself, does he do this with X? And X is the best hand that you beat. Does he do this with 10s? There's not a chance in hell. Okay, so now we got to go with missed draws. Does he do this with the King of Hearts? We have a big problem. There's a very good chance we would have heard from the King of Hearts on the flop. There's a very good chance we would have heard from it by now. So we can't even count all those combinations. Okay. So now we got to look at total bluffs. All right. Why? 5s are not total bluffs anymore. Why? They caught up on the river. So he's got to be turning something like 7s into a bluff. Why would he do that? If he could just check and see if it's good. It's very likely to be good. We just checked 3 times. We could have King 10 of diamonds here. Why would he turn that into a bluff? It makes no sense to call here, and you'll see people do that all the time because they can't downshift. Because on the flop, they have a ton of equity, and that turn is horrendous, and that river is worse. That is the big problem with jacks. People getting attached to the hand. That's not the fault of the holding. That is not the fault of pocket jacks. That is user error. I was capable of user error with pocket jacks quite a bit when I started. Now with some practice, I think we had one hand in this. I had my assistant. I said, just pick like 25 hands that are really problematic with jacks. I think we looked through them together. And I said, if I lose, I lose. Show people that, because people need to know you're not always 100%, right? But you can get the accuracy a lot better if you're careful. Sometimes you're going to have to accept a loss. Sometimes you're going to have to be realistic and go, he could be bluffing me here, but he kind of earned it. Because this spot, we can't really logically call. And these are the situations you see people piss away money with jacks all the time. With a bet on that river that makes 0 sense, and with a check call on that river because we get entitled, because we had the best hand pre-flop most likely, because, come on man, isn't this like the 5th or 6th best hand in Hold'em? None of that matters. That's 2 out of 7 of the final cards. We need to be better than that. So let's go ahead and take a look at our notes.
Wow, you made it all the way to the end. Good job, good work. That's over 1 hour of fantastic tips from PokerCoaching.com's own Alex Fitzgerald. And remember that if this video gets over 1,500 likes, I will release the final part of this series that covers all the teaching points that you need to know in order to play pocket jacks profitably. I do like to see who's made it to the end of this video, so if you're hearing this, I want you to try to guess where my favorite place to play poker is. Write it in the comment section below. And for those who answered the last question in part 1, I did not forget about you. My favorite poker hand is pocket aces, the most profitable hand in poker, obviously. Come on, everyone. But more specifically, the ace of diamonds and the ace of hearts. Well done to those who got it right, including Ed Forsema, I'm probably going to mess up some names here, Gabe Price, Badger Sports Service, and Marius Hoel. Congrats to you all for guessing the 2 red aces correctly. Good luck in your games. Thanks again for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Yeah, I'm talking to you.